communities so that they can make the changes that they need.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Thousands of people continue to flee areas of Pakistan's Punjab province amidst warnings of new flooding. On Tuesday, residents evacuated the central city of Muzaffargarh, home to over 250,000 people. The flood's destruction of over 1.4 million acres of Punjab's crops has led to a scarcity of food and skyrocketing food prices. Aid groups say the need for international aid is dire. According to Oxfam, pledges from world donors amount to just $3 in aid for every flood victim in Pakistan. The death toll, meanwhile, from flooding in China has doubled to over 700. Landslides were triggered Monday when a blocked river burst in China's northwestern Gansu province. Over 1,000 people are still missing. Statewide primaries were held Tuesday in 4 states. In Colorado, a record turnout saw Senator Michael Bennet beating out progressive challenger Andrew Romanoff in the state's Democratic Senate primary. On the Republican side, Tea Party favorite Ken Buck defeated the former Lieutenant Governor Jane Norton for the Senate nomination. In Connecticut, the professional wrestling magnate Linda McMahon beat out former Congressmember Rob Simmons in the Republican Senate primary. McMahon will face Connecticut Attorney General Richard Blumenthal to fill the seat left vacant by the retiring Senator Christopher Dodd. We'll have more on Tuesday's primaries later in the broadcast. President Obama has signed into law a $26 billion measure. Democrats say they'll save the jobs of 300,000 public sector workers, around half of them teachers. The House reconvened from summer recess to approve the state aid bill on Tuesday following its Senate passage last week. To advance the bill, Democratic leaders agreed to cut $12 billion in spending on food stamps. The Food Research and Action Center says the cuts will impact some 40 million people when they take effect in 2014. A family of 4 that receives food stamps stands to lose $59 in monthly benefits. Democratic Congressmember Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut voted for the measure, but said, quote, "I cannot in good conscience condone what we've taken away. The bill shamefully pits these priorities against each other." BP has suspended work on plugging its ruptured oil well over a storm approaching the Gulf Coast. The Coast Guard says the storm could turn into a tropical depression that may delay operations up to 3 days. A special judicial panel, meanwhile, has tapped a New Orleans federal judge to oversee over 300 civil lawsuits against BP and other companies involved in the Gulf oil disaster. BP and several other firms face legal action from fishermen, injured workers, and Gulf Coast residents for damages stemming from the April 20th explosion aboard the Deepwater Horizon. BP had lobbied for the cases to be tried in Houston, where its U.S. operations are based. Jury selection has begun in the Guantanamo military trial of the Canadian prisoner Omar Khadr. The judge in the case has ruled Khadr's confessions to interrogators can be used as evidence against him, even though defense attorneys say the statements were illegally obtained through torture and cruelty. Lisa Hajar, a sociologist covering the trial for the Middle East Research and Information Project, said the ruling will force the defense to re-air its account of Khadr's torture.
He was interrogated while he was wounded. He was subjected to protracted sleep deprivation and position abuse. He was used as a human mop, had pine cleaner thrown on him. Although the judge didn't find that to be cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment and exclude it, the jury now will have an opportunity to hear this evidence again and make their determination.
Khadr's trial is the first under the Obama administration's revised military commission system. It's also the first war crimes tribunal anywhere since World War II to prosecute someone for acts allegedly committed as a juvenile. Khadr was captured in Afghanistan at the age of 15. Jurors were told Tuesday they can consider Khadr's age in delivering a verdict. In a statement, the UN's envoy for children in armed conflict, Radhika Kumaraswamy, criticized the trial, saying it could set a precedent threatening the legal status of child soldiers worldwide. Several human rights groups have asked the whistleblower website WikiLeaks to censor its collection of leaked Afghan war documents to hide the names of Afghans who've collaborated with the U.S.-led occupation. The The groups, including the Afghan Independent Human Rights Commission and Amnesty International, say the identity of collaborators should be kept secret to protect them from violent reprisals. The online weblog Zero Intelligence Agents, meanwhile, has published a geospatial graphic of the escalating violence in Afghanistan. The graphic is based on the records of attacks found in the WikiLeaks documents. Divided for every year of the war up until last year, the dots representing attacks increased chronologically until ultimately forming a dense ring around the entire Afghan map. According to the UN, Afghan civilian casualties have risen by 31% in the first half of 2010. Venezuela and Colombia have restored diplomatic ties after a long simmering dispute reached a crisis point last month. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez suspended ties with Colombia after the Colombian government accused Chavez of harboring Colombian guerrillas. On Tuesday, Chavez met with Colombia's new president, Manuel Santos, in the Colombian town of Santa Marta near the border with Venezuela. Both Santos and Chavez pledged to seek cooperation.
We have decided that both countries will reestablish their diplomatic ties and look to the future, and a roadmap so that all aspects of the relationship can progress and advance and can deepen.
We have established some principles. We have set the foundation stone of our new relationship. Now we must look after it with very sensitive efforts.
The Mexican Supreme Court has ruled that same-sex marriages performed in the capital of Mexico City must be recognized in all of Mexico's 31 states. The ruling could effectively extend full marriage rights for Mexico's gay and lesbian couples nationwide. The ruling comes a week after the court upheld the law legalizing same-sex marriages in Mexico City. Deadly wildfires sparked by a heat wave in Russia are now raising fears of the potential spread of radioactive fumes from the Chernobyl disaster of 24 years ago. The environmental group Greenpeace says the fires have broken out in regions still contaminated by the April 1986 explosions at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The Israeli military has reportedly destroyed hundreds of gravestones in a centuries-old Muslim cemetery in Jerusalem. Palestinians say bulldozers were used to raise the graves Tuesday as an Israeli court rejected a petition to halt the demolitions. The destruction occurred near the site of the planned Museum of Tolerance, a project funded by the U.S.-based Simon Wiesenthal Center. Palestinians have opposed the museum because of its proximity to the cemetery. The Obama administration, meanwhile, is continuing its effort to pressure the Palestinian Authority to drop an insistence on an Israeli settlement freeze as a precondition for direct talks. After a meeting with Middle East envoy George Mitchell, Palestinian negotiator Saeb Erekat said the settlement demand remains unchanged.
Once again, we are not against direct negotiations. Once again, we want to resume direct negotiations.